Hello and welcome to another episode of Casual Friday. I'm here with the Duck. We are here at the same price, it feels like, for the nth week, and hopefully this 27 handle will move on eventually. But for the time being, we're stuck with it, so we're going to talk about it. As always, the show is brought to you by WooX. Links available in the description below. That's not one of those arbitrary YouTube links in the description. We actually want you to read at least a long-form article to know about the partnership, about the exchange, and there are a lot of learning educational resources available there as well, even if you don't want to trade there. If you do, you can sign up with our link to both support the show and also try out the zero fee trading for deposits over $100 for a period of 2 weeks. So with that out of the way, Duck, how are you and how is the market?
I'm doing good. I've just been playing Diablo 4 the
Nice.
entire day, basically, which has been great. Actually love
Which
the
is why
game.
this show is coming out later than usual.
My bad. Got completely sidetracked. Anyway, so yeah, that's been good. The market's been absolute shit. And I'm saying that while I had a bunch of position print quite big, but like with the market, I realistically only mean Bitcoin. Bitcoin's been trading like a piece of shit. And that, coupled with the fact that I'm making a bunch of money on altcoins, has me a little bit worried, not gonna lie. Like, that's not a good combination, usually. But yeah, we'll talk about it.
Yeah, like using your own portfolio as a market signal tends to be amazing. Like I remember when I got a real interest in DeFi at the DeFi Pico top, and aside from trading it, I just joined all these discords and started reading about governance. And I kind of stopped myself. I'm like, wait, what am I actually doing? And then after that, it just literally went to zero within within the month. So it's always fun when you notice these little idiosyncrasies in terms of when your behavior changes and where your attention like shifts to different things, like what it means for the market as a whole. Because we like to extrapolate from the average participant's psychology as to what it means for like prices or anything like that. But our own psychology is no exception to that, right? So it's quite fun to see the footprints of that. The monthly closed, and it was, a bit of a nothing
burger.
Yeah, nothing
Yep.
burger. If you wanted to go really kind of reaching for conclusions, you could argue that it closed below, the spiked and closed above previous month's low, and that's what the market is trading at the moment. But there's no monthly structure here, really, and there's no monthly range either. And the whole spike and close above argument has to be visible on other timeframes for it to make sense. We're going to talk about them, but yeah, monthly just seems like for the 10th show in a row, it's basically 35 is resistance, sort of 20 to 20 odd is support, and we're literally in the middle and we're stuck. So expecting, the monthly time frame redemption arc until the market actually breaks out of this range, it kind of isn't available. Now, maybe if we form a new range here and we have some monthly candles to work with, then we can build something. But that I'm not sure what our mental states would look like if that's what we're in for. A multi-month diddling in the middle is just how you lose your entire account. So
Yeah, that sounds horrendous.
It sounds
I could
pretty
see
bad.
it. Yeah.
Yeah, I know. The weekly is the same. Like even if you look at like the average closes or whatever the past few weeks, like nothing's really happened structurally. We talked about on Technical Roundup how the prevailing theme seems to be the lack of follow through on the bearish side, but also with time we argued also generally favors bulls. I think that is true, but up to a point, right? Because if time just favors absolutely no one, then having any sort of directional bias becomes almost arbitrary. And we've had another weekly close, and this week looks like it's going to close above that 26.6 wick that we were talking about. But it's just a tale of spike, 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 and nothing's really going on. This weekly will tapped the 26.6 level, which is fine as long as that holds. But it also just spiked above previous week's high and got rejected nastily, right? So it wasn't look like the daily time frame, which is probably the most instructive one, the one we're going to talk about. That whole reclaim type of scenario that we discussed, that petered out pretty quickly. And it currently doesn't, but before we jump onto the daily and kind of follow up on the daily reclaim argument, do you have anything to add on the weekly, or is it just as kind of miserable with big levels above us, big levels below us, and it's spiking but really not gone anywhere?
Yeah, so what I'm looking at on the weekly is basically that like 27.5k level.
Yeah.
If you close below that, it kind of looks bad to me. That's kind of like the line in the sand. Like if we close this weekend below 27.5, for example, at 27k, there's still it'd be okay at 27.4, right? But if it's closing at 27, it starts looking kind of shitty. And so that's kind of like what I'm looking at in general. But it's been so choppy.
Yes.
I don't even know. I'm not even sure if it's gonna make any difference. Like when the market is this choppy and it's even getting like the chop is getting to the weekly time frame, then you know that you're gonna have a problem if you're
It's like,
trying
is
to
nothing
trade.
sacred? Is no time frame safe from this
I
type
mean,
of price action?
the monthly is safe, and I think it will forever be safe.
Yeah,
But
true.
other than that, like, yeah, it's been a little bit rough. And if you're looking at the daily, that's I mean, that's just horrendous.
Yeah, let's talk about that. And also, just as a quick note, on the weekly, I'm very close to just mentally tapping out of caring about it. Insofar as, had these levels and these spikes, but maybe I should just like zoom out, fuck off, and do something else. And until the first two digits of the price, as long as they're the same 2-7 type thing, just not pay attention to the market.
Yeah.
And then so the daily is where most of the work has to be done, as you'd expect when volatility becomes constricted. You kind of have to cope using lower time frames because the higher time frames aren't moving. But the dailies also, I mean, if you look at all the way to back when this range started in like end of March, the dailies had a ton of fake out signals, like a sort of way more than you'd expect from this time frame. I mean, monthly safer, etc., but daily tended to be like, for swing or medium term trading, you would get fake outs, but at least the fake outs were themselves compelling signals. But this has been exceptionally noisy in my estimation. And the argument we were making is both in the newsletter and in previous shows, it was basically a combination of sort of the daily cluster going back to, again, sort of second half of March as being a pivot. And then more recently, sort of on the pre-breakdown range, similar at sort of 27.3-ish. And we had like a Sunday pump, basically. We even wrote about in the newsletter what the bearish argument would look like, is that the weekend moves are mean reverting. And mean reverting they were, because like on the way down, this thing just did absolutely nothing. And in terms of the daily close, it's... Like, I could definitely cope and add some new levels. Like, if I wanted to take the more recent consolidation, sort of 12th, 13th of May, and draw out the lowest close there, I could make a really sort of reaching argument that, hey, it's some sort of support or whatever else. But really, sort of, if we stick to the cluster, it looks like it just fell through it. Just kind of bearish retest territory. And if you look at the range low that I was paying attention to, it looks like we closed below it as well. So the daily was really the only time frame that could give you some semblance of a bullish argument, because the whole thing of, yes, well, it's at resistance and time favors bulls, yada yada, kind of back and forth ping pong, but you need one of the higher time frames to kick in and like give you a chance to position for this thing, given the other time frames really aren't playing ball, at least from the weekly and the monthly. So the daily then breaks out and you're like, okay, well, this cluster is now support, surely there's something there, and the answer is no, there wasn't, because it's just kind of 4 days of puke culminating in a close below. So what do you think of this daily? Do we just delete all the levels and say, you know what, screw you, basically? Or how are you navigating this?
Yeah, I mean, either you ignore, then you like ignore all the levels and you're like, okay, this is just chop, or you're saying this is bearish.
Yeah.
The bullish argument is beyond me on the daily time frame right now, which is quite sad. I'm so far capitulated that I'm almost willing to be like, fuck all the levels, just ignore it. But that's usually when you get fucked over, right?
Yeah, sure.
So, yeah. There's like I've been basically yesterday and today I've been kind of de-risking quite a bit across the market, which basically just meant like for Bitcoin I took like a slight loss, for Litecoin I took a big win, and for XRP I took quite a big win as well. And I still have a little bit, but I de-risked considerably, just based on the fact that, I mean, even if you make the argument that it's just chop and that you can ignore it, I don't have a good technical reason to be in Bitcoin anymore.
When did you ever
right?
need one, Don? Let's be honest.
I mean, I have to at least have some indication, right? So, for example, like with Bitcoin, when I was like, when I bought my Litecoin, which was at the bottom for Bitcoin, right, on the 25th of May, I was kind of like in the camp, this breakdown seems kind of bullshit to me. And I could see a squeeze above 27.4, which could lead to a new trend. That's why I bought Litecoin in the first place. I was like, Litecoin has the halving. It looked bullish on the Bitcoin pair. And then we had that kind of tailwind on Bitcoin where I was like, there's a good squeeze set up there. Right now, I have 0 setups beyond like a bearish one, which I wouldn't want to take because, I mean, I don't know, just feels wrong too. So I'm just... capitulating on the trading side for a little bit, which to be honest, like given that this has gone sideways, my trading has done way better than it should have, like because I was expecting upside and I got my upside. I just thought that Bitcoin would help it, which it hasn't, right? So
Yeah.
I got my upside in the altcoins, which, like I said at the start of the show, makes me nervous every time. Like when I'm like technically wrong on Bitcoin, but I still make money with altcoins, like that just gets me spooked the fuck out, because usually the altcoins do well or like better on the tail end
Yeah.
of a rally,
Yeah.
which to be fair, the altcoins haven't rallied enough to make that argument like a one where you'd be like, okay, you have to exit. But they've gotten close enough. So I don't know. I don't like this. This chart on the daily, I don't like it on the weekly. Like if we close like this, I will not like it. I might reconsider like just adding exposure back on Monday if we have a good close this weekend. But until then, I'm just
Another
gonna play.
weekend pump to fake out
Yeah.
Don. Yeah, it's like save the weekly. It's like they pump it on Sunday and then spends the rest of the week just bleeding out, like
Yeah,
what
but
happened this week.
the saddest part is that like even if Bitcoin like did that, I would probably just want to be buying altcoins again.
Oh, you are the
Because
problem. You realize?
yeah,
Yeah.
and that's kind of the problem. The problem is also that the altcoin Bitcoin pairs just look good. Like there's a few altcoin Bitcoin pairs, like Litecoin for example, or XRP, that just look good, and that makes me want to buy them if Bitcoin plays ball. But that also isn't really the best scenario for Bitcoin. So it's an odd one. But I don't like the monthly, as in like the monthlies, whatever. I don't like the weekly. That's much worse than it should have been, given last week's close. Like this kind of immediate nuke, even though, and let's be real, like the S&P has done wonders in the
Oh,
last week.
yeah.
Like we've had a lot of strength, and it's just not kind of flown into Bitcoin. Like all of that just has me like, I don't know, disinterested.
For
And
sure.
I'll just take the altcoin trades if I see them, but right now I'll just leave it.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I basically got rescued by my shitty sleep and work schedule recently because I had a bullish bias going into this week where I was like, if it dips, this is like a reclaim on the daily after that impulse candle on the 28th. I don't want to chase it because it's at the mid-range. Thank God. at least had the wisdom for that. But then if it pulls back, I'll want a piece of it. And then on the 4-hour, there's like a super obvious and clear range to deal with, right? Between sort of the range low at 26.3-ish and the range high at 27.4 or thereabouts. And that sort of lines up with the daily as well. And my argument was, that's your standard support resistance flip thing. It should line up with the daily as well. So any dips into there should be bid, essentially. But when I woke up and like got to my desk and tried to sort my life out, I'm looking at the 4-hour and it's already closed like back inside the range. And I'm thinking, well, that's pretty bad, that's a bad look, because if the daily reclaim argument is correct, then the 4-hour at most should be kind of wicking into that area, but certainly not like closing below and getting stuffed and showing all these bearish retests and whatnot. And so really this week I just spent waiting to see if it wants to close back above 27.4 on the 4-hour, because then the argument, it's one of those, again, cascading time frame arguments, right? That like you've got a daily support, the 4-hour kind of deviated below it, that ends up being the daily wick, and then it's above 27.4 and you can long it for with a daily target. All of that seemed to make sense, but then there was just zero interest in the market. It basically broke out on the Sunday, went sideways and then puked back in. Looks like a standard failed breakout. And that standard failed breakout on the 4-hour then took the sales out of the daily reclaim argument. And without the daily reclaim argument, you've got no higher time frame bullish argument either.
Yep.
So like, okay, fuck me, I guess, is the sort of technical specification there. And at the moment, it's just in the middle of that range as well.
Yeah.
I'm open-minded to maybe trying to buy it if it gets above 27.4, just because it's that double fake out setup that we've discussed before, where it had one failed breakout, and if the most damage that bears can do is keep it at the mid-range before it tries again, I think that's worth a punt, and it's salvageable. But in the absence of that, I don't want to diddle in the middle. I don't want to fade the 4-hour failed breakout. And now that you've stripped the daily setup away from me, I can't work with nothing. You got to give me something, and the market is just flat out refusing. I think that's really BTC done, to be honest. I think we just need to leave these price levels. Like the daily's been really bad at this sort of 27-ish area. The weekly, just, the closes have been more fake outs than you'd expect and not great. And then the monthly has been AWOL for some time now. It's time to go, you know?
Yeah. The funny thing is about the daily, right? Like I was like yesterday, I had still hope left. I was like, okay, if today closes above 27.4, like this is all gonna be okay. It's not looking great, but it's gonna be okay. And that's why I held my Litecoin, right? Like because I was like, oh, this could still
so
close
funny.
up. And then Bitcoin nuked and Litecoin went up like almost 10%. I was like, well,
so silly.
I'll take it. So I technically got invalidated on Bitcoin, but given like the majority of my position was Litecoin, I was like, oh, it's okay. But yeah, it's an odd one, and I do agree with you. Like, I want to be long this, you know. Like, I wanna see a setup here, but I just cannot find it.
Yeah, and our standards are bloody low as well, right? To be
yes,
clear. Like the bar is legit, on the floor. It's rolling down a hill.
Like legit, I'm just looking for any excuse, but there is zero. Like I cannot find anything, and when I cannot find anything, even though I want to long, I'm just gonna be like, I don't want to give back the gains I've made in the last 2 months, and that's the best way to do it. So I'll just stay on the sidelines.
Sell after May and go away. Seems to be the prevailing mantra. It's also funny because like that sounds like terrible trading advice where I want to be long and I'm looking for reasons. It's like I believe in the conclusion and I'm looking for the supporting evidence, but sometimes you have this backdrop of a directional bias, or you think that if it goes a little bit it'll go a lot, but you still need it for it to cross like a minimum threshold of evidence or a setup to kind of warrant positioning. And if it can't even do that, then there's zero intellectual justification, at least within your system, that you can give, and that those tend to be the toughest losses because you're being an idiot.
Especially while it's dropping, like when it's dropping a lot, like if the market's down 20% and I start getting this feeling of I want to be long, like I can find a lot of things that will make me long anyway, like even if it looks like shit, but that's because a bunch of people just had to sell that didn't want to sell, right? Like that makes it infinitely more attractive. Right now what you have is a bunch of people are positioned how they want to be positioned. And I mean, that's not necessarily what I want to be trading if I don't get any reason to be in a trade, because then like everyone's positioned and it nukes one way or the other, and I don't like it. So
yeah. And also just the very fact that it's chopping means that it's basically at or around fair value, right? At least for the current, where the market is currently. And in general, for almost any type of trading system, you want to be generally buying below fair value and selling above it, right? Or selling above it and buying below, whatever. And if the market's just like completely mean reverting, the range is getting narrower and it's going sideways, the scope for making arguments that it's mispriced also become narrower and much more difficult to make. That's sort of what we're dealing with. I probably should have lost money this week, but the 4 hour pretty much saved me. I was really close to just buying that 4 hour candle, the big one that nuked within the range, with the argument that it's a daily wick, but it just kind of didn't feel right. And thank God for that. The zero trade meme continues, which I enjoy. That's become a part of crypto Twitter lore now. It's like I can post anything, and it's like, "Lol, have you taken a trade?" And the answer is yes, but I'm just gonna lean into it at this point. So use that ref link or something, because that's apparently how I make all my money. ETHUSD. Let's talk about that. I don't know what to say, because essentially, like the weekly time frame, I'm so tired of talking about this failed breakout. Like it's exhausting. It's been months, Don. Like the only thing that's it's failing to move. It's not even a failed breakout. It's a failure of volatility at this point. And it didn't even have the decency yet to retest that same 1940 level. It just closed below, then grinded back up. And ETHBTC we'll talk about, because that's been marching up. But this thing on the USD pair just has not done anything meaningful at all. And the range we sort of carved out on the daily in Technical Roundup, trletter.com, we kind of eyeballed it at 1910-ish. I don't know exactly where our range low was. It might have been a bit lower at like 1820 or something of that nature. Maybe it was a bit higher, whatever. But basically it's the same, like barely, is this even $100? Like $100 range in ETH, weekly levels not being tested, and daily just sort of grinding, hitting resistance and retracing off levels that we've already had failed breakouts from. It's just frustrating, like speaking super colloquially, you had a failed breakout on the weekly, a failed breakout on the daily, the market doesn't go anywhere, and then it rallies and you think, oh, the failed breakout failed to break down, so that's bullish, but then it rallies and it hits shitty resistance and goes down lower, and the range is getting tighter and tighter, where it's like $100 now, and it's just, come on, man, what are we doing here? And the answer is, for smart people trading altcoins, You know, at least the asynchronous whatever ones. I know last week we argued that it's not like an amazing environment for alts because you know, when volatility looks like this, if you're wrong, you're going to be really wrong, and a lot of the majors look shit. And I still think that view is broadly correct. Like, look at the outlier things that are pumping. It's like Dino, Boomer, DonAlt watchlist coins, you know?
It's true, yeah.
A few shiny things here and there, but you replied to Inversbra on that thing showing the top performers. It's not like the market has some theme or sector or some even trend. It's all on-chain, like, scamming each other, which we'll talk about in the news portion. And then it's like Boomer coins with some sort of contrived narrative, or I guess contrived is subjective, but getting bid into a market with zero volatility and also zero volume, which we'll also discuss. So yeah, I'm definitely like, I think if you're listening to this and you just haven't chipped away at your trading balance, just losing money while the market hasn't moved, you should consider that as a massive win, in my opinion. Like, you've probably outperformed like a decent chunk of market participants if in the last like month, essentially, or at least month, you're not down trying to trade this chop. I think it's pretty decent. And you know, if you caught a couple of altcoin punts or whatever, I think that's a pat on the back, because it's also a feature of crypto Twitter that not many people talk about getting chopped up. It's all winners on there, obviously, but we've seen so many times they've been victims of this, where, you know, you have a month, the market has barely moved and has been range bound, and you look at your account and it's in drawdown 5, 10, 15, 20, 40%. That's a completely normal, very frequent phenomenon that happens in these markets, and that's what the conditions do to you. And so if you've avoided that much, I think that's in itself praiseworthy and probably not talked about enough.
Yeah. I mean, I 100% agree. It's just like when I look at ETH, right, it's frustrating on the weekly, but like the ETH BTC chart is a sight to behold. I don't know if you've looked at the lower time frames on ETH BTC.
This is, yeah,
it's absolutely hilarious. Like the 4 hour, like the fuck is that?
That's the one
chart?
I clicked on immediately. Yeah, it's just getting walked up, isn't it?
I mean, just click on the 1 hour, which is even funnier. Like, what the fuck?
It's the S&P on the decade time frame.
Yeah, it's just literally just straight up. And even if you look on the daily time frame, that looks excellent, right? I talked about it last week. I was like, ETH just seems really good.
Yeah,
it still seems really good. And this is kind of like one, like there's a few reasons why I don't like Bitcoin. One, the chart. Two, the S&P's been going up. Bitcoin's not doing anything. And three, Bitcoin cannot keep up with the altcoins, right? There's like just on the top of my head why I don't like Bitcoin, like what it's doing right now. And you look at ETH and the opposite is true, right? Like it's outperforming everything. It's just straight up walking up. But on the USD pair, it's not that exciting. So like one of those is gonna break. And I mean, I'd love to see the market being taken up by ETH, basically. And it kind of does look like it wants to. It's just kind of funny that it's doing this while the USD pair isn't really moving. It's just all been basically ETH outperforming Bitcoin and Bitcoin going a little bit lower.
Yeah.
Which is it's an odd thing. I don't really know what to make of it. Like when I look at the ETH BTC pair, I just want to buy ETH. Just seems like it wants to teleport up. When I look at Bitcoin, I'm like, I don't want to do anything in this market. And then I look at other altcoins, I'm like, like it's just such a struggle right now.
And then you look at your Steam with Diablo, and you're like, okay, this is what I actually want to do now.
Exactly.
Fair enough. Yeah, I agree with you. I don't see anything different there. And the altcoins, like, it's nice to see Boomer coins bid, because maybe not in terms of market structure, but at least you don't have to worry about it being some meme coin that's going to go down 70%. You don't have to worry about like weird VC unlock schedules that you forgot to keep track of. It's just, you know, it ain't much, but it's honest work type of thing. And recently it's been much, actually. Let's talk about those two, because we also mentioned them in our newsletter, trletter.com. It was LTC, XRP, and Render, and they've done okay since then, I think, suffices to say. On the LTC front, it's hit my FUD resistance level from before.
Oh, God, that's why, yeah.
At around $94.
I hate you so much.
Generational adamantium cell wall. But yeah, it's sort of, you know, the range I had as before is sort of 94 to 85. And 85 was really nice, and it's kind of rotated from range low to range high. I had a really difficult time writing up your bull thesis in Technical Roundup when we were working on that, because I was wondering if it's like a super technical case, and then I slapped myself because I know better than to ask that question. So I had to settle for some I don't know, some argument essentially saying that sometimes the market has a really weak resistance above it, and if the market breaks it, it's not going to pull back and it's going to go much higher. And if it kind of looks like it might test it, then that's worth punting. So something of that nature, and that's kind of where this market has been. So the argument is essentially it hasn't gone to zero. 100 has been tested a bunch of times and it's weak, and it's, depending on how you carve up your market structure charts, it's at least it's not making lower lows, unlike a bunch of other USD pairs, right? So it's like if there's a chance it goes to 100, for which there is some evidence, there's a chance that 100 breaks impulsively, for which there is also evidence given how much it's been tested, and so you're basically positioning yourself to catch a piece of that.
Yeah.
So I think LTC that's still a decent range to work with. It might be the case that 100 plus. Look, this is the classic caveat. I wanted to say above 100 it'll look really strong and that'll be the big level break that'll take you much higher. But like realistically, what are the chances of getting a good entry above 100? You're either going to try to breakout trade it and you're the literal Pico top wick, or it breaks and you're waiting for a pullback that never comes. And that's why I think that if you wanted to argue for positioning into resistance, it kind of has to be based off of that premise, right? That if you try to buy the level, you're likely to lose money. If you're trying to buy above the level, the type of pullback you're targeting is unlikely to happen. So your best bet is to try to buy some sort of higher low structure into the level, and then your bet is on the level breaking, and so you don't have to worry about positioning for the break because you already are positioned for it. I don't know if that made any sense whatsoever, but it's my best good faith attempt at adding some logic to your madness instead of just saying Don's just fucking crazy and he does this esoteric horoscope chart bullshit, and it sometimes works out. I'm giving you intellectual cover. I'm like those scientists who went in front of Congress and said smoking is good for you or whatever,
No, I mean it's roughly accurate. Like in general, like when you have a rally into shitty resistance that you've hit a couple times, sometimes like I like to long resistance when I see good reason to. And now it sound completely horrendous to people, but like that's where you just buy, and then you're either it starts walking down and you're like, oh shit, I was wrong, and then you sell and you lose a little bit, or you're very very right and it just teleports and you like other people don't get an entry. And that's kind of what happened with Litecoin. Like I bought it when it dumped a lot, and then it just walked up. It didn't give a single pullback. I mean, it did kind of give a pullback at 88, but that's a shitty pullback for anyone that wants to get long, right? Like, the fuck do you do with that? So, yeah, I that's why like I was pretty eager to buy 85. Basically, I mean, I bought 80, sold 91, 91, 92. Then I bought 85 and sold again at 91, 92. And then I was like, okay, I'm gonna do this one more time. And then I bought 88. So like Litecoin trading's been excellent for me. But at the same time, like I've been getting chopped up on Bitcoin, which has been quite funny, because usually it's the other way around. Like if I get chopped up somewhere, it's the altcoins. But I've been doing well on the altcoins, which sometimes is like a good indication what the market wants to do, right? Like if you're bad at altcoin trading and you're suddenly starting to make money, maybe it's time to hold your entries a little bit longer, because maybe the market has just shifted and now like it's in favor of altcoins. I don't know. Like that's how I usually like when I start making a bunch of money on altcoins, I like to kind of keep it rolling if I can. But right now, like I don't know, like it's like with Litecoin, for example, like it's such a it's a really good looking chart on the USD pair, right? You look on the monthly. I don't know if you've looked on the monthly yet, but that just looks so good to me. You basically had a green candle up during November, a little bit of a pullback the next month, and then another impulse to the upside. You didn't really have any pullback afterwards. You just had sideways, right? And it's starting to look like it wants to curl up. So that's a really, really good looking chart on its own. Problem is, like I said, Bitcoin is not playing ball. But that's something that I like when I look at the monthly, right? Now also on the weekly, like Litecoin USD is kind of curling upwards. It's walking up. It's just a question of, for me anyway, are we too close to the halving to make this like a good trade? And I honestly don't have an answer to it, because 2 months roughly to the halving is very little time. And a lot of people are basically like, everyone is looking at it and everyone is thinking about, should I get in on this Litecoin halving trade or not? And a bunch of people are already in waiting for it. So like it's a tough position to be in, because if the halving plays out and this doesn't pump, you're gonna get dumped on by a bunch of people most likely. Which makes it, like, the closer it gets to halving, makes it more and more of a difficult trade.
Yeah.
Which is why, like, I've been jumping in and out of it so much, because I'm like every other day I just like reconsider, and I'm like, it's too late, and then I get out, and then I'm like, but look at the chart, like it's so good looking, so I get back in, and it keeps going back and forth. And good part for me is that I tend to get bullish when it dips and get bearish when it pumps, which has helped my balance a little bit. But yeah, Litecoin's a tough one. I still think the chart looks really good. Like the monthly and the weekly look really good. And also the daily, honestly, like it looks good on the USD pair on all three fronts. I would just like to have Bitcoin on board too, because
That
if
helps.
Bitcoin dumps, if Bitcoin dumps, like the best setup is
Yes.
probably gonna get nuked anyway.
Yeah, that's what makes it tricky. Essentially you have to trade altcoins without a directional bias at the moment, or at least
Yeah.
the absence of a clear bullish directional bias, and that always makes it, especially for swings. Like I think for intraday time frame, like really lower time frame stuff, the whole you need BTC alignment, it certainly helps, but I also think it's less necessary, right? Like if you're trading 5, 15 hourly time frame, 4-hour time frame strategies and rotations, you don't need the monthly BTC chart to look amazing to make money on those strategies. But the higher time frame and the bigger swings you're going for altcoins, the more important it is that BTC is aligned, BTC and ETH, unless you're going for kind of late cycle idiosyncratic stuff where BTC is top, then it's like the last dance of alts, which is like musical chairs on crack. But arguably the halving trade is also musical chairs on crack. So
Yep.
From a timing perspective, at least, that's tricky. I mean, also just like, again, completely colloquially, part of the issue is that we have to make like a weekly show where we talk about like daily, weekly swing trading oriented stuff in a market where if we were to look at it ourselves, we'd probably spend 2 minutes looking at like BTC ETH and say, fuck this, fuck off, basically.
Yeah.
And instead we have to, we basically have to convert it into content of some form. But to be clear, that is at least my view when it comes to, if someone says, what do you think about BTC and ETH higher timeframes? I'd say I don't think about BTC and ETH higher timeframes. And the market hasn't given me a good reason to lean one way or the other. It's like everyone who's tried to instigate something, be it a breakdown or a breakout, has not been successful. And that's really the story there. And you can add a bunch of color to it, like, oh well, in the meantime, Legacy's been doing really well, and altcoins have had these, single name or one or two names pump. But really, unless you get good signals from the majors, in general, I'll tend to just risk a lot less or shorten my time frames significantly. And that should be clear to the audience who watches the show weekly, that it's literally the same TA for BTC and ETH every week, essentially, right? Failed breakout on ETH, 2K, but it hasn't gone anywhere. BTC, the monthly's not doing anything. 30 above us, 20 below us. This is like diddling in the middle. It's like, come on, guys. You can't expect, like, I think anyone who has radically different views week on week isn't sort of looking at the market particularly closely, or maybe has some crazy methodology that I can't relate to. Should we talk about XRP and then touch on the S&P and NASDAQ when, the risk assets that actually go up?
Yeah. I mean, XRP looks really, really good to me too. Like both of those, like Litecoin and XRP just look really good. If you just look at XRP on the weekly, right? You see that you have on the 10th of October or like 3rd of October, whichever you take, you have a high set at 0.52, 0.53. Roughly, where we nuked afterwards, right? We fell back into that old range between 0.3 and 0.4 roughly.
Yeah.
And then we started walking up. And what it looks like right now, like even as someone that doesn't use patterns, right? Like this is like capped on the upside by 0.53 resistance.
Yes.
That we've tested 3 times now. And it's walking up on support. We've tested, like you can draw a diagonal basically from 0.33, as in from the 2nd of January through like the 6th of March into the recent dip that we've had.
Yeah, go ahead.
And it's kind of just walking up that, right? And it's getting compressed into that resistance. And you have a bunch, like there's another catalyst right there for XRP with the SEC case, right?
That multi-month catalyst that no one has any deadlines for.
Yes,
Yeah.
but it's drawing very close. I think they're supposed to have something happen middle of this month.
Okay.
I'm not entirely up to date. I'm just looking at the chart and I'm like, okay, there's some action there anyway.
Yes.
So I really like that chart. It looks like it wants to go, and if it does go, like this is one of these where it either goes to the downside and you're losing like 50% if you don't have a stop loss, or it goes to the upside in the doubles. And those are usually the areas where you do actually want to take trades, right? When you can see that there's volatility incoming, because I mean, if you take trades during chop too much, you lose a bunch of money,
Sure.
right? And price doesn't move, so it's not like if you take a long while the market is completely and utterly nuking, yeah, you lose money, but also like if you're bullish crypto, you get to buy cheaper too. If you lose money during chop, you don't have any of that. You basically just lose a bunch of money, and now you can buy less in total, and you're probably gonna lose mental capital too, and you're actually just incapable of buying properly at some point if you just get chopped up too much, right? So if you have this kind of setup where you know that it's gonna move, that's usually a good area to take trades in. Whether you take them up or down, like, doesn't really matter, right? Because you basically avoid all of that uncertainty that if I get stopped out, is it actually still going to go my way? Because if you get stopped out on a position here, as in if XRP goes basically below weekly support at 0.46, 0.47, that thing probably goes quite hard to the downside. And then you got stopped out, but at least you got stopped out in price when it goes like quite a bit below, so it's not like you're
It was worth it.
yeah, I mean, at least you're not like kind of gonna be sitting there wondering if you should re-enter because your trade didn't really get invalidated. Like, I hate when that happens. Like when you
Yes.
have a shitty invalidation, the market just barely takes you out, goes back up, and you're like, actually my idea is still valid even though I got technically invalidated. The worst kind of thing to happen to you as a trader, because then you're gonna doubt yourself, and then if you go back into the trade and get chopped up again, you're gonna be like so mad at yourself for being dumb that you're just gonna do dumb shit. So
That's when I delete stuff off my watch list. You know, like usually
yeah,
2-3 bad trades in a row, that ticker is going. You know, surprised I've still got BTC on there. To be honest, like
yeah, but that's exactly it. And so like XRP USD, especially on the weekly, this just looks excellent. If Bitcoin nukes off of this daily kind of false breakout that we had, that ended up just kind of like getting stuffed, XRP would be one of the ones that I would like to buy. Same with Litecoin. But I don't know if I'm gonna get the chance to or not.
Yeah.
And I hate this kind of situation because, like I said, I like both of those charts. I just don't like the Bitcoin chart, which makes me kind of too like too afraid to basically hold this shit for too long.
Yeah. It just feels like if Bitcoin isn't on your side, it's like an automatic conviction downgrade, you know?
Yep.
It's like whatever you thought about the altcoin market and whatever you thought of those setups, you kind of have to turn it down a notch because you don't know if you've got headwinds or tailwinds coming from all the from the correlations with the big boys, which is annoying. Especially because we're talking again about like weekly, daily type of breakout swing trades. You kind of need to be right on BTC and ETH, or not if you're trading Litecoin this week, apparently, Don. So
yeah, same with XRP. If you look at XRP Bitcoin on the weekly, that's been an excellent week for XRP.
yeah,
like you made a bunch of money last week and this week, the last 3 weeks actually. If you look at XRP USD on the weekly and you go over to Bitcoin, and the last 3 weeks have been kind of garbage. And
yes.
like there's there's money to be made. It's just how long is that gonna last if Bitcoin doesn't actually go up? And the answer to that I don't have. I'm just gonna and that's why I'm just gonna sit at home, play Diablo 4 all weekend, and ignore this shit. Because at the end of the day, like, no trade is also like a trade. Essentially, like me not losing money, being dumb. That's usually a good thing. So
yeah, I agree with that. I think that's really all on the altcoin front, at least as far as I had. I mean, render, Apple, AI, whatever narrative nonsense, probably getting a bit fatigued. At least narratively. I mean, even sort of technically, it's been a bit droopy. Like I'm looking at the render on the 4-hour, it kind of looks like a rounded, you know, like you just want to draw a rounded top over it.
yeah,
That's kind of the immediate temptation. I mean, Lido's up 10% today, which is quite. I mean, the way this coin trades is super interesting.
Yeah, it trades like it's on crack, basically.
Absolutely.
It goes up and down 50%.
Agreed there. The
Which
levels
is a
are
good,
okay.
yeah, and it's a good, like, that's the coin to trade then. Like, if you get like the big moves up and big moves down, like the less leverage you can use, basically.
Yes.
Like, I know that almost everyone in the audience is gonna be like a leverage idiot.
Not our audience, because they read all of our work, Don. What are you talking about? But if you are going to be a leverage idiot, do it on our ref link, for charity.
But yeah, like the less leverage you can use for the same amount of kind of gain. Like if something moves 10% up and down every other day,
yes.
You don't even have to lever up to make a bunch of money, right? Even if you're trading low time frames, which is quite nice. So that's like one of the ones that you should be looking at. I've just like for Lido, I've been like trying to get an entry or trying to figure out where this is gonna go, and I've been struggling, so I've just been ignoring it.
Oh, should have watched Altcoin Thursdays last week, Don. Had all the answers on a platter. I mean, that's not true. But yeah, I totally agree. If there's something's just so volatile, 10, 20%, especially applied to meme coins that got listed, like if you're using leverage for those, I mean, good lord, right? Like whatever further returns you think you might get from the larger position size is completely overshadowed by the increased liquidation risk. And most of the time that trade-off isn't worth it. If anything, you should celebrate the fact that it's that volatile that you don't need to start mucking about with futures in order to trade it. And I think also this will hopefully resonate with most people. The odds of you mismanaging a trade that's leveraged versus just via spot, those are two very different just mindsets, really. Like I can think of so many trades I've mismanaged just because there was leverage involved and that's the product I'm trading and I'm sizing it up and doing whatever. Whereas with spot, it just tends to be a bit more chill, and your trade management can be less emotional. You're not worried about like margin levels, and you can just look at the price and do business that way versus looking at your maintenance margin, liquidation price, and so on and so forth. It does make a big sort of psychological difference, I find. So if you can avoid it, that's a huge luxury, I feel like. Yeah, final bit is, let's talk about real risk markets. S&P and NASDAQ have been on a bloody tear. And as far as this pertains to crypto, it's just kind of sad that we haven't been able to enjoy this. Because S&P and BTC looked pretty similar up until, like a week or two ago, where they were basically just moving sideways after an impulsive move up. And then the S&P broke up from that impulse, and crypto hasn't. And that sucks. That's kind of disappointing. Because what would suck is then, we keep going sideways while the S&P hits resistance, like the monthly 43, 4400, and then it nukes, and then we nuke with it. I'm not sure how strong that argument is, given correlations in general have been sort of trending lower. But the fact that we're not following up on the upside is itself either just means correlations have been washed out, which is, you can make arguments for and against that. But it could also mean just relative weakness. And so it would be a classic kind of crypto trap where you enjoy none of the upside, but then as soon as there's a red candle, all the correlation traders wait, Undertaker style, wake up from their caskets and press the red button on this thing. But yeah, these are like some chunky break. I don't know why my voice broke there. Puberty is very exciting. But like these are some chunky breakouts on the monthly and the weekly S&P. It's just I'm just eyeing 4300 S&P, Don, and I take back everything I said about fudding the Wall Street cheat sheet, because if it forms the right shoulder on this bitch, Don, 4400, then you Wall Street cheat sheet this thing to zero. Hyperbole, obviously, but we're coming into monthly resistance. I think that much is fair to say as far as the S&P goes. NASDAQ is also pretty much there, right? Depending on which cluster and pre-breakout point you want to use. Sort of 15.5 to, I don't know, 14.8-ish. That last red candle before we made the top and then nuked, that's also resistance. So you have a point now where crypto is consolidating, meme coin scamming, not keeping up with risk indices, and those same risk indices are trading into monthly levels of resistance. I don't love that cocktail. And again, I'd be willing to mitigate that argument if Bitcoin had strength on some sort of time frame, but we just had the daily setup, the rug pulled out from under us. So it's a bit tentative, I think, is a charitable word to use. What do you think? 4300, right shoulder, echo bubble, Peter Schiff victory lap, or what are we dealing with here?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not the biggest fan of, like, I've been saying 4300, right, for the last months. I was like, this is where it's gonna, like, 4300 to 3.7. That's where it's gonna range in between. Said that over and over and over again. Right now, we're getting there, and I'm kind of like bummed out because basically all of the chopped up, like I talked about getting chopped up on Bitcoin, right? All of what I've been getting chopped up there has basically been me expecting the S&P to go up and buying Bitcoin because of it, and then getting fucked while the S&P goes higher.
You had like a
right?
month of trades where you were bottom ticking the S&P and then crypto wouldn't move, and I was just begging you to go trade ES futures or something because it was so funny.
Yeah, I just cannot like that. I hate that. And it's I think it's gonna, if we reject from 4,300 on the S&P, I think it's gonna spill over into crypto. It's one of the reasons why like I'm a little bit more cautious, even though I like the charts on like I said, the altcoins, not on Bitcoin. So that's a tough one. That's like really, really tough. Like the market goes up and up and up and up, and the further it goes up, the more risky it becomes, in my opinion, to kind of be bullish crypto. But crypto hasn't gone up, and that's hard to kind of deal with, especially given if you consider that Facebook went up 3x from the bottom, or even more. I don't even want to know. And I bought Bitcoin instead and got a rally of like 50% ish, 80%, whatever. 80% versus 3x in like a household name. It's a little bit of a depressing kind of bounce.
Yeah.
And one of the biggest kind of bearish arguments I see for crypto right now, right, is that the whole AI movement isn't really helping us.
Yes.
Like a bunch of crypto people have been trying to make it so. Like they've been trying to shoehorn AI into crypto, but that's just bullshit and everyone knows it, right?
Let's talk about this. Fuck it. News section time. And I've
Yeah.
actually got this tweet saved in my famous news tabs. This exact point you were making, you're talking to Luke from Twitter, and you said, I'm more worried about it ever recovering than I've ever been. Was obvious before, doesn't feel that obvious now. And then Ari Paul comes in. He said, I was confident in previous bears that regardless of product market fit, existential security, or usefulness, that we'd see new highs just from memes as we got speculative adoption. We got that. New highs might be possible without fundamentals, but probably only with big macro tailwind. And then you responded with the core of your argument here. The space was small and attention was minimal. Now the space is big and attention is massive and very negative. It's much harder to make this space run properly now. Not impossible, but harder. That coupled with the fact that tech interest is entirely in the AI camp now, which drains quite a bit of potential from the market, isn't really the best combination, in my opinion. I pretty much agree, right? So if we, first of all, we're not in a zero rate environment anymore where kind of anything goes. And even in that environment, like crypto and Web3 and tech, we were quite sort of integral to that Ponzi, speculative, frothy tech basket. Now that's less clear because two things have changed. One is the zero interest pie has been eaten up. Like we don't really have that same flavor, if you will, available because the whole rate's higher for longer, or at the very least it'll take a while for us to for that liquidity profile, if you will, to come back to what we're used to. If it'll ever come back, I mean, it probably will, but I expect it'll take longer than 2 years. This macro moves very slowly, especially when it comes to like credit and interest rates. So we don't have the benefit of zero rates, sort of black swan after black swan, print everything type of macro is just not in our favor. And so that pie is either smaller or in a different flavor, depending on how you want to stretch the metaphor. But then within that same smaller pie, now the crypto section of it carries significant like reputational risk, regulatory risk, and it's kind of the shitty part of the pie. It's sort of all dry and crusty. And then there's a new wonderful part of it that the market is FOMOing into, and looking at Nvidia is kind of sufficient evidence of that, but also just like who's raising money and where the interest is. AI is taking up a huge chunk of that. And so in summary, you essentially have a point where the risk-taking pie is smaller, the interest rates environment is just not as favorable or comparable as it was to when we had much higher prices. And then even within the existing speculative capital that's available, crypto is likely just losing attention span and losing money to AI. And not just because AI is great, but also at the same time, crypto blew itself up. So
Yep.
all of those ingredients suck, I think. The best counter argument I can come up with, because I do find that thesis quite compelling, the best counter argument I think is essentially that people who've always argued that, oh, well, the next bubble will be smaller and it's not, this was it and it's over, basically. That's always been historically, that's been the midwit take. Now, we're not dealing with massive sample sizes here, so we can't really know. And I think if you're going to make that argument, it's more compelling than ever in terms of this time is different, but I'm just quite worried that that's hardly an original thought, and
Yeah.
history isn't kind to people who've taken that view of crypto. Although again, my inclination is that there are meaningful distinctions between this time and previous cycles. So how do you navigate that?
I mean, the problem is that you could make an argument that like AI does well. You can kind of like shoehorn crypto into it, be like, okay, it's tech. If bunch of money flows into AI, they're gonna look for something where they like something else, basically. Like, how do you get more exposure? Oh, I could just buy crypto. Like, has loosely like it's tech, it's internet. Like it has something to do with it. Like you could make that argument. It's just a really tough one while the macro situation is as it is, right? Like if everyone has free money, I think that argument could fly. Right now, it's a little bit less so. So that's kind of like the fundamental thing is just kind of not that great. I think, like you can. I think the most likely outcome of this whole scenario is that AI keeps doing well, and that a bunch of people that were in crypto pivot into AI, and that they sell their crypto to buy stuff in AI with. Now, if that's gonna kind of like whether that's gonna cancel out the people that will literally just zero IQ think that okay, crypto is internet money, AI is internet whatever. So we're just gonna buy crypto too. I don't know, but I for me the longer term outlook like of Bitcoin just like making like massive gains is less good than it has ever been. Like I think like kind of my view on the market for the last kind of like 5 6 years has been that this is the market where you can make the most money, and I think that's gonna change. And that's like there's still gonna be like altcoin pumps, and there's still gonna be like Bitcoin pumps where you can make a bunch of money. But I think the kind of the attention and the degen the degeneracy that we had in the last couple of years of people just being like, oh, this is kind of like I want to level up because this is the future of money, this is the future of whatever. I think that's gonna shift over drastically into like stuff like AI, and we've seen that in the last 2 months, right? Like uh, the traditional coin that not the traditional coins, the traditional stocks that have anything to do with AI have outdone crypto by a shitload, and I think that's going to continue. Um, which just, I mean, there's still money to be made. There was always money to be made in gold too, right?
Yeah.
It's
If
just
you're
like,
selling newsletters and hats, yeah.
yeah. I mean, like gold goes up 5% in a couple of years. I mean, maybe crypto goes to 60K and then goes up 5% every 5 or 10 years too. Um, which would kind of suck, right? The reason why we're trading this market is because it's so volatile, because it's so, I mean, I guess because people cannot really like it, because it's such a tech thing that people don't really understand. That just kind of makes it so that if it goes up, people think, "Holy shit, this is the future," and if it goes down, people think it's over. Um, and I think that's basically AI now. Like if it goes up, people think it's the future. It's so easy to say because I mean, obviously it is, right? Like everyone is like, oh shit, AI is just gonna take our jobs. Like this thing is gonna blow everything out the water. And we used to be that, and now we're not. And I think that's gonna make trading this market more difficult and less exciting. So that's
Yeah.
kind of my Debbie Downer view on it.
Sure.
But yeah, we'll see. I'd love to be proven wrong because at the end of the day, I really don't want to trade AI
Oh,
stuff.
fuck that, please.
I'd just rather trade crypto. Like that's the market that I love. It's the market that I'm trading best. But yeah, I think it's gonna be a little bit more tough.
Yeah, it's like AI is going to take our jobs, especially if you're a crypto trader. It's like we're an affected group. No, I think all of that makes sense, and I think also people like if your baseline for what a bull market is 2021, that's a pretty scary proposition because previous bull markets they were very bullish, but they weren't like 2021 was an exception, like an outlier. That thing was actually insane, and it's because of like basically consecutive black swans, which is a contradiction in terms, but basically macro insanity across like a 2 year period. Something hopefully we never see again in our lives. But in crypto, that also coincided with both sort of global credit creation to an unprecedented degree, and then within crypto, insane like a full-on credit cycle, credit creation within the space of 1 or 2 years, plus a shit ton of fraud on top. And it was like a perfect storm for that. And also, as you mentioned, the attention that it was getting as the hot thing in tech. Everyone was pivoting to Web3, NFT, etc. It was literally the darling of the speculative tech space. And now I think you can attack that argument on the macro front and on the there is another darling in town front. And those arguments, until proven otherwise, are compelling. I've yet to see particularly compelling, as we discussed last week, sort of crypto AI crossover arguments. I'm sure they exist. It's just in their current form, they're not sending their best. They seem to be really sort of reaching conclusions, but I don't have the intellectual hubris to argue that there is no overlap, and I've thought of all the possible versions, and none of it makes sense. If anything, ruling out Bitcoin and ETH in terms of its narrative malleability seems like a bad idea, because we've been able to attach ourselves to every single sort of Ponzi hot thing and pivot and find a way to be relevant. Maybe we'll do it again, or at least for our sake, I hope we do, because the alternative is kind of rough. Cool. So we'll see how much the AI guys take our money and take our capital. Other news stuff I've got, slightly shorter this week, which is maybe a good thing. I've got the following. So I don't know if you saw this. Binance to block privacy coins in 4 European countries: France, Italy, Poland, and Spain. The measure comes into effect on 26th of June and will impact 12 privacy coins, including Zcash and Monero. Some proper OG names here as well: Decred, Dash, Zcash, Pivx, Navcoin. Do you remember all of these? Secret, and Mobile Coin. Yeah, and Mobile Coin, the privacy coin, which is quite funny. So I understand this from a regulatory point of view, but it does set a pretty scary precedent insofar as there's just this category of coins. You can essentially like legislate and mandate a category of coins that you're just like not allowed to trade or not allowed to list. And if you can do that to like one set of coins, it kind of follows that you can do it to another and base it on similar reasoning, even if it's not a direct sort of one-to-one analogy. And you know, for example, if privacy is one of those things and how it's, you know, supposedly untraceable and so on and so forth, is it really that absurd to posit that you could make a similar argument if you're one of these legislators for Bitcoin because of its carbon emissions, waste, proof of work mechanism, and sort of trying to outlaw it on those grounds? Obviously, it's a much bigger undertaking, and you know, the node decentralization of Bitcoin, so on and so forth, all the technical stuff. But if you essentially have an authority that can get the biggest exchange to just get rid of a whole category of coins, that seems like quite a big power to be able to wield, and that takes a lot of influence, and the kind of precedent it sets doesn't make me super comfortable, because if privacy is a sufficient cause to basically nuke a sector and it works and the biggest exchange complies, then you know, there's nothing more temporary, there's nothing more permanent than a temporary government program, to misquote Milton Friedman, you know.
Yeah, it's a little bit of a scary one, especially given that crypto is kind of like, I mean, crypto is a big fuck you to the like to almost all governments, right? It's at least it's intended to be, and if it can just get wrecked like this, I mean, Binance is going to delist it, and then it's just going to be like, okay, is anyone ever going to trade these things again? Like, they're going to just go to zero, right? And then the use case goes to almost zero as well. Like, where the fuck are you going to buy them? So it's kind of like, this could happen to any coin, like you said, and that is scary, and that kind of defeats the purpose too, I think. Like, if you can just kill a coin by delisting it off of the one centralized exchange that really exists out there, I mean, I don't know, like, does all of it even make sense, right? Like, if they can do this, they can delist ETH, they can delist Bitcoin eventually, and then no one's going to trade it anymore, and it's going to kind of like disappear. That's like scary stuff, and no one really cares about the privacy coins because they haven't gone up in years and years, so everyone's just holding other stuff. But it does set a very scary precedent, and I think the privacy sector isn't necessarily the only one that's going to get hit in the long run.
Exactly. You could just say climate and proof of work. I mean,
yes.
I tend to be pretty non-conspiratorial with these things, but if privacy is a valid cause, like, we know that politically climate is a very sort of powerful arena in which to operate. So it wouldn't surprise me. Especially again, we're in a sort of vulnerable position as a crypto industry because we've kind of failed to build anything, and most of the people correctly associate us with mass fraud and Ponzi schemes. So we don't have much to fight back with in the political arena, and we haven't
No.
really mobilized much in the years. And yeah, it's just been we don't really build for the future, right? It's like essentially, I'm in crypto. Let's try to hit and run as much money as I can via Ponzi schemes, and then forget the industry exists. Answers for like a large amount of people in the space, which is completely understandable, given it rewards kind of narcissistic sociopath type personalities, but it sucks for people who actually want to stick around and have a market because once they're off to a country with no extradition treaty with the US to enjoy their money, we're sort of left cleaning up the fraud Ponzi's and are the getting beat with the political stick to whoever needs some points in the polls. So yeah.
I mean, good part is that all of that is going to change the moment this thing goes up 50%. Like then the entire narrative changes again. It's just, that's the backdrop, right? And that's still going to be the case even if we go up. Like people will think differently about it. Like if Bitcoin goes from here 27 to like, let's say 45K, people will love crypto again. It's just how it kind of goes, but we're still going to have to fight this uphill battle just based on the fact that 2022 was horrendous. A bunch of stuff that shouldn't have blown up blew up. A bunch of people that shouldn't have been frauds turned out to be frauds, right? Like all of that shit has a tail, and that tail I don't think has fully hit us yet. I think it's just starting to.
It moves so slowly too, right? Like you and I are seeing in the past year ICO enforcement actions from names we haven't heard from since January 2018.
Yep.
So that certainly doesn't help.
Like this is gonna drag us down basically for quite a while, and
yeah,
it is quite easy to attack crypto right now because one, the whole climate movement is a big one, and I mean I think it's an important one, but they're kind of like overzealous in a lot of places, right? So it's easy to kind of just assume, okay, crypto is using electricity, or like Bitcoin is using electricity. Let's just attack it. I mean, it's useless anyway. And honestly, we cannot really argue against that point. I mean, I don't think Bitcoin is useless, but we really haven't done much in the last 10 years to kind of get it in the mainstream. Like, there's not really a use case that is like completely adopted by the world now. If you look around, like AI, for example, that's been around for quite a while, but like since it's become popular, right? A bunch of people are using it, and they're using it quite well, and they're making money with it. They're doing this, that, and the other, right? And it's not only speculation.
yes, and there are no like obvious negative externalities associated with it either, right?
Yes.
Like, oh yeah, Bitcoin is great, but I lost a bunch of money in a Ponzi scheme, all the carbon cost, if you will. Whereas with products like with the AI ones with real product market fit, it's just a cool thing that you use, and whatever negative externalities there are, they're not clear unless you're like an AI doomer who thinks it's going to kill us, and that's an interesting discussion. But yeah, it's just no comparison.
So we have this kind of shitty situation where we are easily attackable, and for good reason too. Let's be honest. Like, I mean, we had 2022 as one of the worst years in crypto history, in my opinion. And then 2023, what did we start out with? Basically, meme coins, a bunch of people scamming left, right, and center,
Raising
a bunch
money.
of people raising money out of the US for coins that are inherently worthless, that they just create just for the meme of it. I mean, what the fuck do we expect, right? Like, it's so hard for me to kind of go there. Like, if I had to have an argument with someone that wants to shut crypto down, like, I almost guaranteed to lose. I'm almost guaranteed to lose that argument, and not because they have the best arguments for their case. It's just we've just kind of been fucking ourselves over for the last couple of years, and it's really, really hard to argue for crypto. I think there's great things in crypto, but it's just been kind of like the focus has been just kind of like making as much money and running away basically for the last couple of years, and
We keep
that's
rewarding
not
those
the best
people
look.
as well.
Yes.
Really. Yeah. Well, gosh, the past couple of casual Fridays, Don. Of all people, you said the opinion will change if it goes to 45k. I feel like you and I are at the top of that list. You know, like it seems like
No.
from our conversations, we need that more than anyone to shift tone on this program at the
Oh,
very
I would
least.
love it. I would
Yeah,
love it. But the thing is, like, for me, like, the price really doesn't make a difference on that.
sure.
Um,
Yeah,
like, for some reason, like, if the price goes up quite a bit and I see negative things in the market, I get even more bearish. Like, like, for example, if we went to 45k now and I saw all the scams still going on, I'd be like, fuck this. Like, it makes me even more bearish because now you have attention because the market is up again, and then you get the scams again, right? And then
yes.
you get the whole networks not working again, all that kind of stuff. It's a tough one. It's a tough one. But I mean, the good thing is you don't have to be like too excited about like all of the future and all of like the eventualities if you just trade the charts. Because I mean, if this thing drops a little bit and people get oversellers shorting it again, I will be the first to kind of go big size and be happy to kind of just be bullish, obnoxiously bullish in front of all of that. So yeah,
The price is
that's
the
gonna
price.
change. Yeah, that's gonna change my opinion the most if people start shorting it on leverage again.
That's quite reasonable. That's quite reasonable. I mean, the market is, as we said, impossible. You know, valuation frameworks suck, and it's all about like positioning, essentially. So,
Yeah.
there you go. Crypto exchange volumes plummet to lowest monthly level since 2020,
Hmm.
and this is also in the backdrop with the backdrop of volatility being very low as well, measured by whatever index you prefer, by either looking at options or whatever else. Implied volatility provided by the block here just looks like a shitcoin downtrend against ETH. um, we talked before whether this is like bullish or bearish, and uh, it doesn't help. I think
No.
because the exchange volumes are down a lot, so there's no speculation there. And the immediate counter argument that comes to mind is, well, yes, but at the same time, we're seeing DEX volumes relative to SEX volumes, as we sort of covered last week, go up. And it's not that crypto exchange volumes are low, meaning speculation is low. It's just the speculation has migrated elsewhere. So this isn't truly representative. The issue with that argument is that the on-chain activity and speculation that we're seeing that are pushing those ratios higher is like liquidity extractive, like massively extractive. It's liquidity draining events of people just sending their money for meme coins, and those meme coins like basically going to zero, or that money just getting locked up and those profits are probably never going to rotate back into the market. And so I'm not sure if that migration of liquidity, if that argument is true, is one that's favorable. Like, oh, look, no, it's fine that the exchanges are doing shit because it's all on-chain. We're fine, don't worry. I'm just not convinced that the on-chain activity that we're seeing is a net plus or net benefit to the space. It doesn't get recycled back in. Those inflows aren't sort of circular or contained in the ecosystem. They just get cashed out into USD with people holding worthless tokens they got on Uniswap. I think at least that's what the available evidence seems to suggest. So I'm assuming your view hasn't changed, that the low exchange volumes things isn't a bullish signal.
No, it's not. I think in general, like it can be, but in this case, I don't think it is, because sometimes you have low volatility, low volumes, but that's just because you're in the process of bottoming.
Yeah, like if that were the case of 15k, different argument, right? But like
Yes.
we've doubled off the lows, and then it's a ghost town.
Yeah, but honestly, like as long as we can hold on Bitcoin in this range, like that's not necessarily the worst thing. It's just what does this mean for altcoins, right? Because the longer this goes on, the longer the volumes stay low, you have a bunch of altcoins kind of inflating away. I mean, it's basically the same with Bitcoin, where you have like new coins entering the market. You have that with almost all the other coins too, right? I think like one of the few exemptions is ETH right now, given it's been deflating more so than inflating, but everything else is kind of like inflating at the rate of like between 2 to 10% ish, anything reasonable anyway. Um, and those coins have to go somewhere, right? And someone has to buy them for prices to keep up. And the lower volume is, the less likely there is someone at the end of that that's willing to absorb those 2 to 10%, which kind of makes like the broad altcoin sector just kind of get fucked. But then again, like we've seen a bunch of like good altcoin action. So far that's not been. I mean, it's been the case really. Like if you look through the altcoin space, it's just been there's been a few outliers. And,
yeah, I think so too. Yeah.
So you can still trade the outliers, you can still make money there. But like if you just go through the list, even the darlings of the last of the last cycle,
or even early
against,
this year, like you
Yeah.
don't need to look far, right?
yeah, it's like it's down only against Bitcoin, and Bitcoin's been. I mean, Bitcoin went from almost 70K to 15, and all these altcoins are down 90% against Bitcoin, right? So the longer this continues, the volumes being dry, the more altcoins will just disappear. Which at the end of the day, I think is a good thing. The problem is that the one moment where you have like a little bit of a pump on Bitcoin, a bunch of people will make new altcoins. So like that kind of drag that altcoins provide, because at the end of the day, like a lot of people go into the market to buy crypto, right?
Yes.
They're not into the market to buy Bitcoin or ETH. Then they buy some obscure shitcoin that like an influencer on crypto made. That's where they put their money in, because they're like, this can still 1000x, Bitcoin cannot. That guy is going to cash that out and buy himself a Lambo with, which is just sell pressure, right?
Yes.
So like you had a new person come in and there's zero net benefit really besides for the Lambo dealer, which is problematic.
And the sex worker community in his local jurisdiction.
Yeah. So I wish like that would be different. Like the whole altcoin situation kind of stealing away from like somewhat decent projects, but I don't think that's ever going to change again.
But it's getting worse, you know?
Yes.
Like if you have these natural emissions on alts, but okay, like they trend up and it's like a sectoral trade and traders are in this and it rotates and these trends last for more than like a week, then you can make an argument that, yeah, you know, there's a skew in terms of who makes money versus loses it overall, as with any market, but that money stays in the ecosystem and rotates and those profits kind of stick around, essentially. And they're fungible, if you will, within the ecosystem. Whereas it seems like the more recent altcoin trends is like purely extractive, and there's almost no hope of seeing those stay in crypto. They just go into USD into a bank account, and that's it. And that shift in market structure isn't hugely helpful, I don't think. Binance lays off non-performers amid shrinking market share. Crypto exchange Binance has laid off non-performers and non-culturally fit people. The move comes 2 months after Binance said it had no plans to cut jobs. Naturally, this is like a type of moment where, because in the past, CZ, I believe, has tweeted that, you know, be careful of companies that like cut employees in a certain context, and also be wary of like high APR, APY type of lending products and so on and so forth. But obviously when Binance does it, it's different. And it's a non-performing cultural fit thing as opposed to just like cutting people out. Binance spokesperson Patrick Hillman said the company regularly goes through a talent diversity audit and resource allocation exercise every 6 months or so. He said the layoffs were not cost-cutting measures. This is a cyclical process, he wrote in a thread, which I'm sure is completely unrelated to crypto volumes going to zero. Like previous exercises, this will be done after several teams finalize that talent density audit. There's no specific number, just direction on where we need to streamline. It is quite entertaining where, you know, Binance just does very similar things to what other businesses do and completely normal things, except there's always like a Binance spin on it, right? Like the whole thing about the headquarters, like, oh, we don't have one. We're like a global decentralized thing. We don't really have an office. It's like, okay. Like every company is making layoffs in tech and crypto, whatever else. Oh no, we're not doing layoffs. We're doing a non-performer cultural talent density audit. It's like, okay. At a certain point, you got to distinguish between form and substance, right? Like even in form, if you're calling it something else, in substance, they're layoffs. And again, I think the fact that the market is anemic as it is, and you're seeing exchanges list anything and everything as aggressively as they are, that is kind of indicative of, the exchanges aren't making as much money as before. Most of them have already gone ahead and laid off people sooner, and it just seems pretty likely that this is just a standard business decision. And I don't see particularly the case for having to spin it as anything other than that. But yeah,
I agree.
You know,
I mean,
this
is
is the Binance exception. Yeah.
Yeah.
Four.
I've always hated it. I mean, there's a reason why I'm blocked on Twitter by
That's
CZ.
so funny. I can't believe it.
I mean, because I like this kind of stuff. Just say it, right? Like it's not like you don't have to pretend. Like I hate being like people being pretentious. Like at the end of the day, like Binance is a business as any other business, right? And it's an exchange the same as any other exchange in crypto. So like, just like, if other exchanges are honest, why can you not be? Like, I don't understand it, and it's not really a good look if you just kind of pretend, and then on the back, like on the backside of everything, you're just kind of like doing whatever everyone else is doing, but pretending to be like a saint. That's always going to raise eyebrows for me, right? Like, Binance should be the most trusted crypto exchange there is, and I mean, just based on how big they are, like, I mean, I'm not worried about Binance, right? But the way they conduct it just screams scam to me, which is horrendous in my opinion, given it's the biggest crypto exchange and I trust it, right? Like, I don't have any fear that Binance is going to go down, but every time I see them communicating, I'm like, my scam alert is going off, and it's like so stupid, right? Because it's so unnecessary. But alas, we have to have some heroes, apparently.
Right. Cult of personality in our decentralized market.
I cannot stand it. I cannot stand it.
I think the 4 thing I find particularly frustrating because it treats everyone like idiot sheep. That, hey, whatever article is floating around, valid or not, whatever the claims are, instead of immediately just like refuting them point by point or saying this bit is true, this is less true, this is true to this extent, we're just going to have this mind hive that tweets 4 so that you don't do any research for yourself or investigate these claims. You'd have to think about them. You just assume prima facie that all of this stuff is just FUD nonsense and supposed to take your BNB from you, and if you saw any other project, exchange, or business doing this, as you said, you would raise an eyebrow. Like, why can't you just be normal, I guess?
Yes.
And not build a cult around that anything that's negative about Binance means it's FUD and it's sort of manipulation and socially engineered and so on and so forth. I've always found that to be is sort of almost like the bigotry of low expectations, right? It's like, you're too dumb to independently assess these claims that are being made about us, so just tweet the number 4 and we'll take care of it. It's like, okay, thanks a lot. That personal responsibility angle just vanished into thin air. Crypto Twitter left jaded after scammer pretends to have cancer to sell NFTs. Did you see this?
No.
This was there was this artist.
Oh, the one with the eye.
The eye
right?
the eye patch. So Crypto Twitter rallied around the purported cancer patient who was trying to sell NFTs yesterday in an act of community goodwill, but it was left jaded after they turned out to be a scammer who disappeared with the funds, 119,000. And apparently there was this is quite the long con, because one of the main people who sort of put support out for this thing on Twitter saying, I think the words were literally, I put my reputation on this, which is a hilarious thing to say when it sort of results in this way. I was like, I put my reputation on this. We've been talking for over 6 months or over a year. This person's art teacher is in contact with me and the family and all this type of stuff. And then it ends up being a scam, which is, this is quintessential crypto, really. I think if you wanted to show someone what the kind of Web3, the ugly side of Web3 looks like, it's essentially this. The space is unbelievably rewarding for people who are, I guess, not monotheists. If you don't think there's a judgment day, and you're just willing to do essentially whatever it takes and have no ethical, moral limitations or principles, crypto is an amazing market for you to just come, extract, and fuck off. And we see that over and over again, granted across different timelines and different degrees of subterfuge, if you will. But if you're that type of person, crypto is just an amazing market to take advantage of people, which sucks, obviously. And it's a net negative and it's extractive. And, if this is your first and only experience of crypto, you're probably not going to come back. It makes you lose faith in the space in general. When you see that legitimate projects and normal people can't raise shit, and then people come about and just post their Ethereum address promising tokens or just pretending they have medical conditions that they don't, and then abusing that good faith, it's all pretty ugly. But I replied to a tweet saying this is sort of expertly executed. This type of long con, 119k, the whole cancer thing. You can't be a monotheist and do this type of stuff.
No,
right?
I mean, you gotta be sick in the head.
You gotta be, there's something
just
really
straight
wrong
up.
with
You have to be I mean, if you're out there and you're just kind of hustling, whatever. I mean, fair enough, right? But this kind of shit, you have to be sick in the head. But apparently, there's enough people that are sick in the head,
and that's the cost for it, Don. 119k.
Yeah. I mean, the crazy part is living with this, right?
Yes.
Just being that kind of piece of shit, only being worth 119k, wild. But I love people, I think.
Yeah, I need 150 at least.
No, but it's just so sad, right? Imagine being the person that is scamming people that are trying to help a person that seems to have cancer.
Yes.
Like this is just the lowest of the low. Like if you're scamming whatever, like a big corporation or something, like I'm like, it's shitty still, but I can at least understand it.
Don is one of those looters you see like raiding an Apple store, you know.
No, but I can at least understand it, you know. But if you're kind of going for the person that is basically helping someone out that is down, I mean, what the fuck? Just, I mean, I don't know, just sad.
And I think there's
Like,
a moral
really, really
difference
sad.
between like rug pulling speculators and rug pulling people who are raising funds on the assumption that they're helping someone with cancer. Right?
Yeah.
There's a bit of a moral difference. I mean, it's all bad, but some bad is more bad than others.
Yeah, and I think this is like
this is
proper. This is proper evil. Like
this is
just
evil.
Proper
Yeah.
evil. Yeah.
Now imagine if you're actually someone with cancer trying to raise funds from here onwards.
Yeah, it's just not gonna happen.
Yeah, it's like prove it. You know, it's like shit. And it's okay. We have a very uplifting and positive final article, Don, since this has been quite doomerish.
Oh yeah, please.
Crypto folks send $1.1 million to
Oh,
Not Lava
kill me.
Labs founder for nothing in return. Crypto degens have sent $1.1 million to Not Lava Labs founder's wallet with the expectation of, quote, nothing in return. It appears to be performance art, criticizing the recent fundraising efforts by Ben ETH. I mean, imitation and flattery, whatever that quote is. But I don't... Like, this is really confusing to me, because I really think if you went to these people who are sending this money, and you ask them, do you really believe, honestly, earnestly believe that you're going to get nothing at all? I think a large part of them would say no. And that they think there's some sort of psyop, and they are going to get airdropped something, and it's going to be the next Pepe or the next Ben or whatever. I really don't think, as literal as this person has been in saying you get nothing in return, I still think, because of some derangement or condition, a non-trivial chunk of the people sending the money think that that it'll somehow pay off and see it as like a risk opportunity, as opposed to just like sending someone $1 million. I don't know what you think of, when people see this type of stuff, the immediate go-to thing is money laundering. I've never been convinced by that personally, and I didn't think it's the case either. But it's also just in general pretty hard to reconcile, because if this kind of stuff is happening in like peak bull market, I can completely understand it, right? Like we can even remember some of the charity stuff that was happening at the top of 2021, just doing all these live streams, raids, musicians, raising money for families, like that type of stuff was really cool and wholesome. But that was after we had the kind of craziest year we've ever had in crypto. That context is understandable. But now we know that households are hurting, like the market kind of sucks, and yet still we're finding, or the community in some sense, is finding millions and tens of millions of dollars to basically fund meme coins. Yeah, throw away, burn. And I'm not sure, given where we are in the market, what to think of that, how that makes sense. And again, how can you not be cynical, right? Like the amount of legitimate teams trying to build something, they have to go through investors who are, tightening up their purses, all that type of stuff. And then, if you catch the right influencer wave, you can make $1 to $20 million. Obviously, those are the exceptional cases, but those are real funds that are going to people, and you just have that money in a wallet under your control. So yeah, this is even as a crypto native, I find some stuff hard to explain, and this is one of those.
Yeah, completely mind blowing that people actually send money there. Like I just don't get it. I mean, I was sitting there being like, this cannot be real, but apparently we have enough stupid people still in the market, even after this kind of bear market, that they're willing to kind of just give away their money. If they were at least like people that were kind of expecting to lose it, fair enough, but they're legit thinking that they're gonna make a bunch of money with this, which is, I don't know, which starts breaking my brain. Like
Yes.
when I think about what they must be thinking, my brain starts hurting because I cannot come up with anything good.
Yeah, and also like if you look at the average participant or try to build a picture, like it says in the article, it's not just a small group of speculators either. More than 1,000 transfers have been made to the wallet, according to Arkham Intelligence, and the largest transfer was for 19K, and that's from $1 million raised. So it's just like a bunch of people sending smaller amounts. It's not like whale games or something, I'd love to talk to these people, but I think I'd have to go jump off a cliff after submitting.
Yeah,
Perhaps I shouldn't.
We should just rather not.
But that is the state of the market. I keep going back to the idea of maybe I should just write like a reflection post, because this does feel like a particularly sort of curious time in the market, where you've had like meme coin mania that has somehow evolved and spilled over into a more degenerate form of gambling, where you're literally burning money and giving it away to people instead of just even buying a token that exists. While at the same time, S&P is ripping, risk assets are ripping in shitty macro conditions, and crypto is not a part of it. And we haven't just gone to the far end of the risk curve, we've just fallen off the risk curve completely. We're rolling off the risk cliff at this point. And there are just so many sort of contradictory signals of this type of mega peak bull market on-chain burn money gambling, while at the same time volumes are dead, the market is flat, and macro sucks. So I don't know. It's a puzzle, one to think about. Thankfully, I don't do much thinking, and I just draw lines and try to bonk and boink. And if I try to think too hard, I'm faced with such an absurd set of facts. I think it's better not to sometimes.
Yeah, I mean, that's basically where I've ended up. I'm just like, I've given up on the thinking part. I'll just leave.
Yeah,
I'll just leave the market to do its thing, and once it actually starts looking better or worse, I'm down to kind of do some action again.
In the meantime, candlestick make boing. It's the founding principle and the one you will always come back to, as much thinking as we may do. That's all from us this week. Thank you for listening to the show. As always, it's brought to you by WeWex. If you want to try out the zero fee trading, you can sign up in the description below. For deposits over $100, you get tried out for 2 weeks for free. And you can also just send us feedback, critiques, all that type of stuff, and we have a direct line to the team and can hopefully make things better, not worse. Before doing that, please read the long form article in the description that talks about the business model, pros, cons, staking, all that type of stuff, counterparty risk, and basically everything you need to know. Thank you for supporting the show. Have a wonderful weekend, and we'll see you next week.
Bye.